The void was silent, but silence in the galactic heart was never peace, it was tension stretched thin across the stars. On the edge of that silence drifted the Terran supercarrier Resolute, its hull a dark leviathan of steel, armored not for ceremony but for survival. From afar it appeared like a drifting monument, a black silhouette against the glow of a pulsar, but inside it pulsed with watchfulness. The year was 6214 of the interstellar calendar, and for the first time in living memory, humanity had been invited to a peace table. The galaxy spoke of reconciliation. The Dominion of Worlds, an empire of 1,000 species, had announced what it called a Treaty of Eternal Peace. It was to be signed on Aerith Prime, a jewel world carved with marble spires and orbital citadels, where the Council claimed all wars would finally end. The promise shimmered across the void: no more fleets burning, no more colonies erased in the crossfire of ancient rivalries. But in the shadowed halls of the Resolute, no one believed a word of it. Admiral Helena Drake stood at the command deck, her hands folded behind her back, her gaze unyielding as she studied the star charts hovering in the air. Around her, officers whispered updates, long-range sensors, hyperspace corridors, the subtle dance of fleets moving under the guise of escorts. Every whisper carried an undercurrent of mistrust. "They called it a peace summit," said Captain Rourke, her second-in-command, "but half the Dominion's battle groups are already converging near Aerith. Too much hardware for a negotiation." Drake's voice was measured steel. "Because it isn't a negotiation. It's a stage. They want us to stand there unarmed, bare our throats, and call it peace." The room fell into silence. Everyone on that deck knew why the Dominion wanted humanity there. Earth's fleets had grown too quickly. In 2 centuries, the Terran Confederacy had risen from backwater obscurity to a power that forced ancient empires to treat with them as equals. The old guard despised it. And when despots despise, they scheme. The invitation to the treaty was not extended out of goodwill, it was bait. But humanity had learned its lessons from history. And so, while the Dominion expected Earth's delegation to arrive in ceremonial frigates, stripped of weapons as per diplomatic custom, Resolute carried more than dignitaries. Its launch bays brimmed with strike craft. Its corridors hid platoons of shock troops. Its AI cores whispered war calculations behind every benign report. Humanity was coming to the peace table, yes, but they were bringing their weapons anyway. The journey to Aerith Prime was a theater of tension. Dominion escorts flanked the Terran ships, each one bristling with cannons, their captains smiling too widely over diplomatic channels. Words of welcome, tones of condescension. A predator's smile wearing a mask of civility. Drake stood before the viewport as Aerith Prime came into view. The planet shimmered like a jewel, continents bathed in emerald seas, vast cities spiraling like constellations carved into the ground. The orbital ring hung above it, massive enough to house entire fleets, adorned with banners of peace. "Beautiful," Rourke muttered beside her. "Too beautiful. Like they dressed it up for a funeral." Drake said nothing. Her eyes lingered on the ring's defense towers, long, angular shadows that pretended to be ceremonial spires. Weapons disguised as monuments. She could almost feel them turning toward her ship. A voice filled the deck, smooth and polished. "Chancellor Vorith, the Dominion's chosen speaker. Terran Confederacy, welcome. Today you step into history. Together, we end the wars that have scarred our stars. Lay down your arms, and let peace begin." Drake let the words linger in the air. Then she gave a simple order: maintain combat readiness. Docking protocols only. Nothing else. The Dominion's voice faltered for the briefest instant before resuming its honeyed tone. They hadn't expected defiance. The docking bay of Aerith Prime was vast enough to swallow cities. Gleaming halls stretched before the Terran delegation as they disembarked, Drake at their head, flanked by officers and diplomats. The air was heavy with incense, banners of 100 species draped across the walls. Alien dignitaries lined the grand hall, some smiling, some whispering, some glaring with unveiled hatred. At the far end stood Chancellor Vorith, his robes glistening with silver threads, his face carved into a mask of benevolence. He spread his arms wide. At last, humanity joins the chorus of peace. Drake's boots echoed on the polished floor. She did not bow. She did not smile. Her eyes locked with his, cold and unblinking. For the faintest instant, the mask slipped. Voritha's gaze hardened, revealing the predator behind the saint. And in that flicker of truth, Drake knew every suspicion was right. This was no treaty. This was an ambush draped in silk. The hours that followed were a dance of words. Speeches flowed like poisoned wine. Delegates spoke of harmony, of unity, of laying down arms for the greater good. But beneath the rhetoric, every phrase was sharpened, every pause calculated. The Dominion's allies circled like vultures, probing, testing, waiting for weakness. Terran delegates, coached by Drake herself, responded with measured resolve. They spoke of peace but conceded nothing. They offered cooperation but never submission. And every time the Dominion pressed, humanity's presence pushed back, subtle, immovable, like steel beneath velvet. Yet tension thickened. Whispers spread through the hall. Reports filtered back from Terran scouts orbiting above, Dominion fleets shifting, drawing into formation around the orbital ring. Far too many ships for a ceremony. Drake stood at the edge of the balcony, looking down at the hall below. Vorith was smiling again, shaking hands, embracing alien leaders. Every gesture was a performance. Every move calculated. And behind it, Drake sensed timing, waiting for a signal. Her earpiece crackled softly. A coded whisper from the Resolute, "Admiral." Energy signatures rising across the orbital ring. Defense towers charging. Her jaw tightened. The trap was almost ready to spring. But so was she. The night before the treaty signing, Drake convened her war council in a quiet chamber. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of star maps. Officers leaned forward, faces etched in steel and determination. "They will strike the moment we disarm," Drake said. "The moment we lay down weapons, the orbital ring will unleash fire, and their fleets will fall upon ours. It won't be a peace ceremony. It will be an execution." Rourke slammed a fist onto the table. "Then we strike first. Hit them before they hit us." "No," Drake replied firmly. "That's what they expect. They want us to fire first so they can brand us warmongers. We'll hold until they bare their teeth, and then we show them what peacekeepers look like when armed." A silence followed, heavy, grim, resolute. "Let them think the trap is theirs," Drake finished, her voice a quiet blade. "When it closes, it will be ours." Outside, the banners of peace fluttered in the false wind of Aerith Prime's domes. Inside, in the heart of humanity's war council, weapons of strategy were sharpened. The stage was set. The galaxy thought tomorrow would bring peace. But tomorrow would bring fire. Dawn on Aerith Prime came with orchestrated beauty. The sun rose over marble towers, its light refracted through crystalline spires that painted the sky in hues of violet and gold. The grand amphitheater prepared for the treaty shimmered like a temple carved for the gods of old. Thousands of dignitaries gathered in robes and armor, banners fluttering, the anthem of peace echoing through the air. But beneath the spectacle, the air was taut with unspoken violence. Admiral Helena Drake moved with her delegation down the ceremonial walkway, her boots clicking against flawless stone. Around her, Dominion guards in gilded armor lined the path. They smiled too much, their weapons too close at hand. It was a corridor of knives disguised as celebration. Captain Rourke leaned close, his voice low. "Our scouts confirm it again. Orbital platforms fully charged. Every fleet within 5 jumps has moved into position. They're surrounding us." Drake didn't falter. "Good," she whispered back. Let them close the jaws. It'll make breaking them cleaner. The amphitheater's heart was a coliseum of diplomacy, a circular hall with towering columns and a dais where the treaty scrolls waited. Chancellor Voreth stood at its center, his silver-threaded robes catching the sunlight, his smile practiced and radiant. Behold, Voreth's voice carried across the amphitheater, amplified by unseen speakers, a new age begins. After centuries of bloodshed, we gather not as enemies, but as brothers. Humanity joins the chorus of peace today, and the stars will sing with unity. Applause roared from Dominion-aligned delegates. Some cheered too loudly, their eyes cold as blades. Drake stepped forward with her delegation. She gave a slow, deliberate nod, her gaze sweeping across the hall. Peace, she said, her voice low but cutting through the chamber like iron. A noble word. But a word means little without truth behind it. The chamber grew quieter, the air tense. Voreth's smile didn't waver, but a shadow flickered behind his eyes. Truth, he echoed smoothly. And trust. Which begins with the laying down of arms. At his signal, Dominion guards stepped forward, collecting ceremonial weapons from delegations across the hall. Blades, staffs, pistols, the symbols of trust. When they reached the Terran delegation, the guards extended their hands expectantly. Drake's officers glanced at her, waiting. She held their gaze for a long, heavy moment. Then, with deliberate calm, she handed over her ceremonial dagger, nothing more. The guards searched for hidden arms but found only silence. They did not realize that the true weapons had never left the Resolute. Voreth's smile widened. The trap was ready. As the last of the weapons were stacked at the dais, Voreth raised his hands. Now, we seal the bond of peace. Humanity, step forward and sign. Drake walked slowly to the center. Her eyes caught the faint shimmer high above, a ripple in the air, a cloaked shield generator hidden in the arches. Her instincts screamed. At the edge of the hall, a Dominion commander pressed a finger to his comms bead. That was the signal. The amphitheater trembled. From orbit, the first blast lanced downward. A spear of plasma fire split the sky, smashing into the Terran escort frigate Vigilant. The ship vanished in a blossom of white light, torn apart before it could even raise shields. Above, the orbital ring came alive. Its defense towers pivoted, disgorging torrents of fire into the Terran formation. Beams carved through space, ripping into hulls. Alarms shrieked in the Resolute, the carrier reeling as its shields flared under the assault. In the amphitheater, chaos erupted. Delegates screamed, some fleeing, others laughing, those who had known this moment was coming. Dominion guards drew hidden blades and rifles, turning on the Terran delegation. Voreth's mask dropped entirely, his voice thundering with venom. Humanity. You came unguarded into the arms of peace, and here you will die. The galaxy will remember your arrogance. Drake did not flinch. In the maelstrom of screams and weapons fire, her voice was steady, commanding. Terrans, engage. Her delegation moved with precision born of forethought. From beneath their ceremonial robes came hidden pulse pistols, miniaturized railguns, compact drone swarms no Dominion scanners had detected. Terran soldiers shed their disguises, revealing powered exosuits compressed into armor plating thin as silk. Gunfire lit the hull. Dominion guards fell in sprays of sparks and blood as Terran firepower tore through them. Delegates who had thought themselves spectators suddenly realized they were prey. Drake ducked behind a column as a plasma bolt sizzled past her head. She keyed her comms, voice sharp. Resolute, execute contingency Omega. Launch wings. Return fire. From orbit, the carrier answered. The Resolute's hangars erupted open, spewing forth squadrons of Terran strike craft. Sleek black interceptors screamed into the void, missile trails carving the darkness. They weaved between plasma lances, unleashing salvos into the Dominion fleet. Enemy cruisers reeled as explosions ripped across their hulls. What had begun as a slaughter turned into a battlefield. In the amphitheater, Drake fought her way toward Vorith. Her officers formed a wedge around her, cutting down Dominion soldiers as they advanced. Rourke's rifle barked thunder, his voice hoarse with fury. Vorith retreated up the dais, his guards throwing themselves in front of him. "You fools," he spat, "did you think your pitiful weapons would save you? We hold the skies. Your fleets are ashes already." Drake's eyes blazed. She shot a guard through the chest and kept moving. "You should have studied history, Chancellor. Humanity doesn't walk into traps." She fired again, blasting the control console beside him. "We turn them." Voritha's expression finally cracked. Above, the orbital ring shuddered. The Resolute had unleashed its hidden arsenal, autonomous drone hives unfolding from its flanks, swarming across the ring's defenses like locusts. Explosions rippled along its surface as Terran Marines drop-podded into its heart, carving out control stations one by one. The Dominion's plan was unraveling. But victory was far from certain. Terran frigates burned in orbit, some already reduced to drifting carcasses. The amphitheater shook as Dominion reinforcements stormed in, hundreds of soldiers pouring through the arches. "Admiral!" Rourke shouted, firing until his rifle hissed dry. "They'll bury us in bodies." Drake's comms crackled again. The Resolute's AI spoke in a calm, clinical tone. "Admiral, we are sustaining heavy damage. Hull integrity at 63%. Fleet losses mounting. Countermeasures suggest escalation required." Drake's pulse hammered. Escalation. The word was code for weapons humanity had sworn never to use, because their very existence was a secret. She ducked as a plasma grenade detonated nearby, the shockwave hurling bodies. She tasted blood, smoke burning in her lungs. Around her, her people fought with desperation but unyielding defiance. Her gaze snapped to Vorith, cornered but still defiant, his voice shrieking above the din, "You cannot win. Humanity will be erased, and the galaxy will never remember your name." Drake rose to her full height, blood running down her temple, eyes burning with resolve. She touched her comms. "Resolute. Prepare escalation." The AI answered, calm as ever. "Acknowledged. Releasing classified weapons protocol." Voritha's smirk faltered. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Humanity hadn't come unarmed. They had come prepared for war no one else could imagine. And now, the Dominion was about to see it. The amphitheater was a furnace of smoke, blood, and fire. Marble shattered under the roar of plasma, banners of peace burned to ash in the chaos. Dominion soldiers pressed from all sides, their war cries echoing off the broken stone. Humanity's delegation fought in the center, a wedge of steel and fury holding back the tide. Admiral Helena Drake stood unflinching, her pulse pistol snapping with precision, her voice carrying over the storm. "Hold your ground. We came to sign peace, let the galaxy see who the true warmongers are." But even as her words rang out, the Dominion pressed harder. More soldiers poured in, more fire rained down from orbit. The Resolute was bleeding, its shields flickering, its decks fractured by plasma impacts. Humanity stood on the knife's edge between survival and annihilation. And then, escalation began. Above the planet, the Resolute shifted. Plates along its hull unfolded, revealing cavities never catalogued in any Dominion database. The ship's silhouette grew monstrous, bristling with systems no one in the galaxy had ever seen. The Dominion fleets faltered. Their captains barked confused orders as scanners lit with anomalies. From the Resolute's belly dropped the first of the Black Arcs, massive coffin-shaped drones, each the size of a corvette. They fell silently into orbit, then bloomed alive with jagged wings of plasma. Swarms of hunter-killer drones poured out from them, each one guided by artificial instincts honed in wars humanity never admitted it had fought. They moved like shadows given form, slipping through enemy shields, ripping apart Dominion hulls with surgical strikes. A Dominion dreadnought fired its broadside into the swarm. For a moment, the void lit like dawn. But when the glare faded, the dreadnought itself cracked open, gutted from the inside by Terran nanoblades that had slipped through its vents. Panic rippled across Dominion comms. This was no navy they understood. It was something else, something born from a species that had learned peace only through fire, and had carried that fire into the stars. In the amphitheater, the battle stuttered. Dominion soldiers hesitated as reports flooded their comms, fleets collapsing, orbital ring stations falling one after another, their vaunted defenses shredded by weapons no treaty had ever acknowledged. Drake advanced through the smoke toward Chancellor Voreth, who stood trembling on the dais, his mask of superiority fractured. What have you done?" he spat. "This is forbidden. These weapons are abominations." Drake's voice was ice.